The world below was a patchwork of frozen fields and skeletal forests, a brutal but beautiful landscape under the pale winter sun. Inside the cramped cockpit of his MiG-29, callsign Falcon, the Ukrainian pilot felt the familiar hum of the twin Klimov engines. This was his office, a place of immense power and equal vulnerability. Today's mission was critical, a low-level strike on a Russian ammunition depot deep behind enemy lines. He was flying nap of the earth, hugging the contours of the terrain at just over 150 feet. Trees and hills flashed by in a dizzying blur, a dangerous but necessary tactic to stay hidden from the ever-watchful eyes of enemy radar. This was survival at its most raw. Every sense was heightened. His eyes scanned the instruments, his hands rested lightly on the stick and throttle, feeling the aircraft's every vibration. The mission briefing had been clear: get in, deliver the payload, and get out fast. The target was a high-value asset, a logistics hub that was fueling the Russian advance in the east. Taking it out would save countless lives on the ground, but the risks were astronomical. The area was crawling with some of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. He was a lone predator, venturing deep into the territory of a much larger and more powerful pack. The cold, thin air was his only cover. He checked his fuel state and navigation systems. Everything was nominal. The jet felt good, responsive, an extension of his own will. He had flown dozens of these missions, each one a roll of the dice. You learn to live with the adrenaline, to make it your ally rather than your enemy. It sharpens your mind, quickens your reflexes, and keeps you alive when seconds are all that separates success from a fiery end. He wasn't thinking about the danger, he was focused on the task. One checkpoint passed, then another. The aircraft sliced through the air, a gray ghost against the winter sky, inching closer to the point of maximum danger. The silence on the radio was both a comfort and a source of tension. No news was good news, meaning he remained undetected, but it also meant he was completely on his own. Down here, skimming the treetops, he was a needle in a colossal haystack. The goal was to stay that way for as long as possible. The ammunition depot was now less than 150 kilometers away. The most dangerous part of the flight was about to begin. He took a steadying breath, his grip tightening ever so slightly on the controls. The calm was about to be shattered. He was ready for the storm. Suddenly, the cockpit erupted in a symphony of terror. A piercing, high-pitched tone screamed through his headset, accompanied by a flashing red light on his radar warning receiver. It was the unmistakable signature of an S-400's gravestone engagement radar. He had been painted. Somewhere, over 120 kilometers away, a Russian crew had found him. Their powerful radar had sliced through the electronic quiet, locking onto his small fighter jet like a hawk spotting a mouse in a field. The hunt was on. He was no longer the hunter. He was now the prey. The system was powerful enough to track him, remember his last known position, and guide a missile with lethal precision. He didn't have time for fear. His training kicked in instantly, his actions becoming a blur of practiced instinct. The warning receiver shrieked again, this time with a new, more urgent tone. It was the signal for a missile launch. A 48 N6 missile, a 7-ton beast, traveling at over 5 times the speed of sound, was now hurtling towards him from beyond the horizon. It would cover the distance between them in less than 2 minutes. In the world of aerial combat, that is a lifetime, and no time at all. Every single second now mattered more than ever before. He had to make the missile lose him, to become a ghost. The S-400 system relies on a sophisticated type of radar called Doppler radar. It works by measuring the change in frequency of the radar waves bouncing off a target, which tells the operators the target's speed relative to them. If a target is moving directly towards or away from the radar, the speed reading is strong and the lock is firm. However, this incredible technology has a weakness. It's like trying to see a car that is moving directly across your path instead of towards you. It's much harder to judge its speed. The pilot knew this. It was a slim chance, but it was the only one he had. He banked the MiG-29 hard, pulling the stick into his gut. The jet groaned under the strain as he wrenched it into a 90-degree turn relative to the incoming radar waves. This maneuver is known as notching, or flying in the beam. By flying perpendicular to the S-400's radar, he drastically reduced his radial velocity. To the computer on the ground, his speed signature suddenly dropped to near zero. He was attempting to disappear from the missile's electronic eyes, to exploit the very physics that made the radar so powerful. It was a high-stakes gamble against one of the deadliest surface-to-air missile systems ever created.
Perfect.
As he held the jet steady in the notch, flying at a right angle to the threat, he slammed a button on his control panel. A series of small explosive charges on the aircraft's fuselage fired, releasing clouds of tiny, hair-thin aluminum strips. This is chaff. To the incoming missile's seeker head, these clouds of metallic fibers create a massive, shimmering radar reflection. It's the electronic equivalent of throwing a bucket of sand in your enemy's eyes. The missile's brain is suddenly overwhelmed with false targets, a huge, confusing blob of radar energy where there was once a single, clear contact. The goal is to make the missile lose the real target in this cloud of decoys. The pilot watched his instruments with an intensity that burned. The screaming launch warning in his headset fell silent. For a moment, there was only the roar of his engines and the pounding of his own heart. It had worked. The 48 N6 missile, confused by the combination of the notch maneuver and the bloom of chaff, had lost its lock. It no longer knew where he was. Unable to reacquire its target, the missile continued on its ballistic path, eventually running out of energy and self-destructing miles away. He had survived the first and most powerful blow. But he knew this was far from over. He had won the first round, but the enemy was smart and, more importantly, they were adaptive. The Russian operators in the S-400 command vehicle would have seen their missile fail. They would have seen his maneuver on their screens, a tiny blip making a hard turn, a bloom of electronic noise, and then nothing. He had vanished from their primary radar screen, but they knew he was still out there, flying low and fast, continuing his mission. They weren't just going to give up. He had poked the bear, and now the bear was angry. The fight for survival had only just begun. He immediately rolled his MiG out of the notch and dove even lower, pushing his throttles to the maximum. He had to put as much distance and terrain as possible between himself and the S-400 site. Every hill, every valley, every forest was now his shield. He was using the Earth itself as a defense, a tactic as old as air combat. While the S-400's main radar might have lost him in the ground clutter, the operators had other tricks up their sleeves. He had outsmarted the machine for a moment, but the humans controlling it were already working on a new plan to kill him. The Russian air defense crew was indeed frustrated, but not defeated. They had lost the MiG-29 on their main radar, its low altitude and defensive maneuver cloaking it in the electronic noise near the ground. But the S-400 network is designed for this. The commander made a quick decision, switching their tactics. They activated a mode of operation known as bistatic radar. This is a clever and deadly technique. Instead of using a single radar dish to both send out a signal and listen for its echo, a bistatic system separates the transmitter and the receiver. This changes the rules of the game entirely. Imagine trying to hide from someone with a flashlight in a dark room. If they hold the flashlight next to their head, you can hide behind a chair and they won't see you. But what if they place the flashlight on one side of the room and stand on the other? Your shadow will be cast in a completely different direction. The place you thought was safe is now exposed. This is how bistatic radar works. The main S-400 radar acted as the powerful transmitter, flooding the entire area with radar energy. But the listening was being done by another, smaller radar receiver, located 40 kilometers away, positioned perfectly to catch the reflections the main radar couldn't. The low-flying MiG-29, hugging the terrain, was invisible to the main S-400 site. But as it flew, its metal airframe bounced the S-400's radar waves in all directions. The separate, forward-deployed receiver, listening silently, picked up these faint, scattered echoes. The computers in the network instantly triangulated the signals. Suddenly, the pilot's position, his exact speed, and his heading reappeared on the Russian screens. He was flying directly towards a pre-planned ambush zone. He was completely unaware that he was visible again, that the enemy was watching his every move, guiding him into a trap. The information from the bistatic network was automatically relayed to a different air defense unit hidden ahead of the MiG's flight path. This wasn't another S-400 battery, but a smaller, more mobile Buck M3 system. The Buck is a deadly medium-range system, a perfect weapon for an ambush. It had been sitting silently, its own radar turned off to avoid detection, waiting for instructions. Now, it had everything it needed. The S-400 network was acting as its eyes, feeding it the precise location of the incoming Ukrainian fighter. The trap was set. The pilot, believing he was still invisible, was flying straight into the jaws of the crocodile. As Falcon screamed over a dense patch of woodland, his world exploded into chaos for the second time. A new alarm, a different, more guttural tone, blared in his ears. This time, the warning was from a Buck M3. There had been no search radar, no warning that he was being tracked. The Buck had received all its targeting data from the wider network and had only turned on its engagement radar at the very last second before launching. It was a classic ambush. Before he could even react, his warning system shrieked with the dreaded sound of missile launch. Then it shrieked again. The Buck crew had fired two missiles, a 9M317M pair, just seconds apart. These missiles were different from the long-range S-400. They were smaller, more agile, and designed for close-in kills. Each one weighed nearly 700 kilograms and was built to withstand incredible forces, capable of pulling up to 35 Gs in its final moments to intercept a maneuvering target. Unlike a fire-and-forget missile, the Buck's projectiles received constant guidance updates from the ground launcher. This meant that simply breaking the launcher's radar lock wasn't enough. The operators on the ground were actively flying the missiles towards him, correcting their course in real time based on his every move. It was a guided punch he couldn't easily slip. The pilot's mind raced. Two missiles, coming from below, closing in fast. Flying low and fast was no longer an advantage. It was a death sentence. There was no terrain to hide behind. His only option was to go vertical, to trade his airspeed for altitude and try to outmaneuver the incoming threats in the vertical plane. It was a desperate, energy-draining move that would leave him slow and vulnerable afterward, but the alternative was a guaranteed hit. He pulled back hard on the stick, the G-forces slamming him down into a seat with crushing weight. The MiG-29, a powerful but aging airframe, responded with a ferocious roar. The nose pitched up towards the sky, and the ground-level scenery was instantly replaced by a canvas of gray clouds. He was pulling 7.5 Gs, meaning his body felt 7.5 times its normal weight. Blood drained from his head, his vision tunneled, and his G-suit inflated tightly around his legs and abdomen to keep him from blacking out. The aircraft was bleeding energy at an alarming rate, sacrificing its forward momentum for a life-saving climb. The two Buck missiles, guided from below, adjusted their own course and began to climb after him. As the MiG rocketed upwards, reaching 4,500 feet in just a matter of seconds, the pilot mashed the chaff dispenser button again. He needed to create another cloud of confusion, another electronic smokescreen for the missiles to get lost in. But this time, he couldn't just rely on chaff. He needed to move, to perform a maneuver so violent and unpredictable that the missile's guidance system couldn't compute a solution. With the missiles closing in, he pushed the stick to the side and kicked the rudder, sending his jet into a spiraling barrel roll while still climbing. The world outside became a spinning vortex of gray sky and white earth. Halfway through the roll, as the cockpit was upside down, he did something that really defied all instinct. He pushed the stick forward. This subjected him to negative Gs, lifting him up against his harness straps with a sickening lurch. This maneuver, a complex blend of a climb, a roll, and a negative G bunt, is designed to do one thing: break a missile's lock. The rapid changes in direction, altitude, and G loading are often just too much for a missile's guidance fins and onboard computer to handle. It's a pilot's last-ditch effort to throw the weapon off its scent, a violent, chaotic dance on the edge of disaster. The brutal maneuver came at a huge cost. In just 40 seconds of life-or-death acrobatics, the MiG's thirsty engines had burned through 300 kilograms of precious fuel. Worse, his airspeed had plummeted. He had traded all of his kinetic energy for the chance to survive. As he leveled out from the dive, the airspeed indicator read a dangerously low 180 knots. At this speed, the MiG was sluggish, unresponsive, and a sitting duck. He was no longer a nimble fighter jet. He was a struggling, heavy piece of metal, barely staying in the air. He had dodged the bullets, but now he was exhausted and exposed. Below him, the two 9M317M missiles, unable to follow the extreme maneuver, lost their energy and their track. They flew through the chaff cloud where he had been moments before, found nothing, and detonated harmlessly. A wave of relief washed over the pilot, but it was short-lived. He looked at his fuel gauge and his airspeed. The situation was critical. He was still deep in enemy territory. His plane was slow and low on fuel, and he knew the Buck crew down below was not done with him yet. They would be reloading. The brief respite was over. The next round was about to begin. The pilot shoved the throttles to their maximum detent, engaging the afterburners. Twin plumes of blue and orange flame erupted from the engines as they dumped raw fuel into the exhaust to generate maximum thrust. The MiG-29 shuddered as it began to accelerate, but it was a slow, agonizing process. He was a marathon runner who had just sprinted for his life, and now he was being asked to sprint again. The fuel consumption was astronomical. The needle on the fuel gauge seemed to be visibly dropping. Every second the afterburners were on, his chances of making it home dwindled. It was a terrible choice: burn the fuel to regain speed and maneuverability, or conserve it and remain a slow, easy target. He knew the Buck crew would be working frantically. A well-trained crew can reload a Buck launcher in a matter of minutes. They knew his general location. They knew he was wounded. Like sharks smelling blood in the water, they would be relentless. He had to get out of their engagement range, and he had to do it now. As his airspeed painfully climbed past 250 knots, he initiated a shallow dive, once again using the terrain to mask his presence. He was back in the weeds, the trees a green blur, just feet below his wings. The adrenaline was still pumping, but now it was mixed with a cold, hard calculation of risk versus reward. His primary mission was still active. The ammo depot was now tantalizingly close. The thought of turning back crossed his mind for a fleeting moment. He was damaged, low on fuel, and had survived 2 separate missile attacks. No one would blame him for aborting. But then he thought of the soldiers on the ground, of the strategic importance of the target. Retreat was not in his DNA. He had come this far, endured this much. He was going to finish the job. This grim determination, this iron will to succeed against impossible odds, is what separates a survivor from a hero. Just as he was stealing his resolve, the horrifying sound returned to his headset. The Buck radar was on him again, and this time the launch warning was immediate. The crew on the ground had reloaded. They had reacquired them. They had fired again. There was no time for fancy maneuvers, no altitude to trade for speed. He was pinned to the deck, low and getting faster, but still vulnerable. The fight wasn't over. The enemy was getting a third chance to kill him, and this time, he had far fewer options left in his playbook. The Buck crew, eager for a kill, and likely frustrated by their first failure, made a critical mistake. In their haste to ensure a kill, they launched 2 more missiles, but this time, they fired them almost simultaneously. On the surface, this seems like a good tactic. Doubling the firepower should double the chance of a hit. However, in the complex world of missile defense, it created a single larger problem for the pilot rather than 2 separate ones. The 2 missiles were flying so close together that his radar warning receiver saw them as one single, very strong threat. He didn't have to defend against missiles coming from different directions or at different times. This simplified his defensive equation. He had one threat to deal with, albeit a very determined one. With his speed now climbing, he had more energy to maneuver. He couldn't go vertical again. He had neither the altitude nor the fuel. His only choice was to stay low and pull the missiles down into the dense air and ground clutter. He executed a last-ditch turn, a maximum G horizontal brake turn that pushed the aircraft to its absolute structural limits. The jet screamed in protest, rivets straining, as he banked hard, trying to force the missiles to overshoot. He dispensed his last remaining bundles of chaff, hoping to create one final moment of confusion. The missiles, following the guidance from the ground radar, were not easily fooled. They adjusted their course, pulling incredible Gs to stay on his tail. From his cockpit, if he craned his neck, he could have seen the smoke trails getting closer, two parallel lines of death closing in. But he held the turn, his body crushed by the force, his eyes locked on his instruments and the sliver of horizon visible through his canopy. He was betting his life that the missiles couldn't turn as tightly as he could at this low altitude. It was a bet he won. The missiles, designed for optimal performance at higher altitudes, struggled in the thick, low-level air. They bled their own energy trying to match his turn. One of the missiles, unable to maintain its track through the chaff and the extreme maneuver, detonated prematurely. The other one overshot his turn by the slimmest of margins. The pilot felt a violent jolt as the missile's proximity fuse detonated just a few hundred feet from his aircraft. The sky lit up, and a hail of shrapnel peppered his right wing and fuselage. Warning lights for hydraulic pressure and engine temperature flashed across his console. He was hit, but he was still flying. Despite the damage, the pilot was now through the worst of the ambush. The Buck battery was behind him, and his path to the target was clear. Adrenaline and sheer willpower took over. His right engine was running rough, and the controls felt sluggish due to hydraulic damage, but the jet was still responding. He leveled his wings and saw the target appear on his heads-up display, exactly where intelligence said it would be. A sprawling complex of warehouses and stacked crates. He lined up his attack run, his focus absolute. He had fought through hell to get here, and he would not be denied. With a flick of a switch, he armed the bombs. At the precise moment, a tone sounded in his headset, and he pressed the release button. Two GBU-39 small-diameter bombs dropped from their pylons, their fins deploying as they began their silent guided glide towards the depot. He didn't wait to watch them hit. He immediately broke hard and low, turning for home. His job was done. Now the only mission that mattered was getting himself and his battered aircraft back to friendly territory. The return flight would be a race against his leaking hydraulics and dwindling fuel. Minutes later, he heard a controller's voice crackle in his ear, confirming a massive secondary explosion at the target location. The ammo depot was gone. A grim smile touched the pilot's lips. It was worth it. Now he nursed his wounded bird, fighting with the controls as the jet struggled to maintain stable flight. Every alarm was screaming, every red light was flashing. He was flying a machine that was actively trying to die, keeping it in the air through skill and determination alone. The long, tense flight back felt like an eternity. Finally, the familiar outline of his home base appeared through the haze. He declared an emergency, and the ground crew prepared for the worst. He lowered the landing gear, receiving 3 green lights, a small miracle. The landing was rough. The damaged jet touched down hard, veering to one side as he fought the rudders. Fire trucks raced alongside him as he rolled to a stop at the end of the runway. As the canopy opened and the cold air hit his face, he sat for a moment, the silence deafening after the roar of combat. He had survived. He had completed his mission. He was home.